What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and to continue my brand new series of classic movie reviews, I'm here to let you know that Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window is no perfect movie. Although in some spots, it does come pretty damn close. So, as some of you may know, Rear Window is about a photographer named L.B. Jeffries, or Jeff, played by Jimmy Stewart, who's in his apartment recovering from a broken leg. And in order to pass the time, he begins spying on his neighbors with binoculars, making assumptions about their lives, giving them nicknames based on their personality traits, and at one point, he becomes convinced that the neighbor directly across from him has murdered his wife. And he enlists the help of his girlfriend Lisa, played by Grace Kelly, and his nurse Stella, played by Thelma Ritter, to help prove this. And the best part about Rear Window is, even if you know what the eventual outcome is going to be, because it is pretty predictable, even if your heart isn't pounding throughout the majority of the movie, because I gotta be honest, mine wasn't, Rear Window is still a unique suspense mystery thriller that demands your constant attention to everything that's happening on screen. And the reason that you pay attention to everything that's happening on screen is that the three main characters are all so likable and you want to see them be proven right. Jimmy Stewart is fantastic as Jeff. He has this everyman personality where he's so soft-spoken and calm, but still very blunt and honest about how he feels towards people. And he doesn't say very harsh things to anyone out of pure hatred or contempt. He does it because he feels it's appropriate for the situation, especially when he's trying to convince everyone around him that the neighbor across the street murdered his wife. I also really like how he's able to, even in the most dire of circumstances, crack a joke to make fun of himself at his own expense, and also take the edge off, take the stress levels down so that you can remain calm and collective and focus on the investigation. But his arc in particular, the things that he learns over the course of the movie, was probably the most fascinating thing about him. At the beginning, he's so detached from everyone around him, especially his girlfriend, that as he's spying on his neighbors, he's spying on them out of envy for supposedly having a much better life than he is. And the more and more that he spends observing this one murder suspect, the more he begins to see the other neighbors in order to pass the time in between. And he sees them experiencing possibly some of their worst moments in their lives. And it makes him acknowledge the fact that everyone around him is suffering in some capacity. And it makes him feel a lot more grateful for the people in his life, to the point where he begins to get them more involved in the investigation, trusts them with the fact that they are willing to risk their own lives in order to help them prove that this guy did kill his wife. In a weird way, Alfred Hitchcock actually uses voyeurism as a metaphor for the way that we make assumptions of other people based on envy and mistrust, and how often we're proven wrong. Jimmy Stewart, in this movie especially, has these assumptions that his girlfriend is too good for him. She has a much more upscale lifestyle and is much more into fashion compared to him, who has more of a simple, adventurous lifestyle, which she says to him over and over again. She's willing to try that out, and also calls him out for not being able to try a little bit of her own side of life. It isn't until they both see the exact same clues that this murder suspect is leaving behind that Lisa as a character has a lot more to prove, and Grace Kelly absolutely rises to the occasion as this smart, honest, dignified woman who would hop a fence in an expensive dress if it meant digging up clues and providing evidence to the police. She's such a surprisingly well-written character for that era, and I'm surprised, based on the success of this movie, that there weren't that many female characters like her in that time period. Thelma Ritter is also really good as the nurse. I was kind of hoping she would be in it a lot more, but she still brings some levity to the subject matter by being this light but still snarky nurse who is kind of Jimmy Stewart's confidant. She gives him advice throughout the majority of the movie, but is never afraid to hold back, just like him, which is what makes them a nice duo. And it's nice to see her go from someone who instantly denies his suspicions to becoming more and more focused on the clues and the tiny details as she's helping him out on the stakeout. Now, I haven't seen every single Alfred Hitchcock movie, and the ones that I have, I could use some refreshing on. But it could possibly be true when people say that this is him at his best. He always does try as often as he can to put the audience and the characters in a single location in order to raise the tension and make you feel trapped. And the apartment complex that Jimmy Stewart lives in is the only location. The majority of the camera angles in this movie only come from his apartment. It really does feel like you're in his mindset, like you're trapped alongside him, being unable to control the situation. And I especially love the fact that as he's observing people with his own eyes and through his binoculars, that there's a certain level of scope based on the geography of the location and how far away Jimmy Stewart is from the other neighbors. If the neighbors are close to him and he's spying on them with binoculars, they're much bigger in scope and their dialogue and sound effects are a lot louder. But as soon as they're farther away, especially as he's spying on the murder suspect, the characters look like ants in comparison. You can hear absolutely nothing that they're saying, and it makes it a lot more mysterious. And one thing that I really appreciate about the direction of the murder suspect is that for the first few shots of him and his wife, they're often in frames within a frame, where the suspect, played by Raymond Burr, will be in this one living room that's portrayed through a window. And then in the other window, you can see the wife who is bedridden. And it shows the separation and the tension of that relationship, and also provides some clues and possible motives as to why he would want to kill his wife without any dialogue whatsoever. There are so many great scenes where it's just Jimmy Stewart observing characters saying nothing, but with the expressions and body language of being so still and motionless, just showing how envious of the lifestyles that he thinks other people have, and then only to be proven wrong over the course of the movie, which I think was also there to kind of make it uncertain as to whether or not Jimmy Stewart was right or wrong about the murder suspect. But I gotta be honest, the biggest problem with Rear Window is that the eventual outcome is incredibly predictable. And a part of that does come from the fact that this movie has been remade and reconceptualized and paid homage to in so many other thrillers that it's not really this movie's fault in particular, but it's something that you can't really ignore, especially if you're someone my age and you watch the movie Disturbia and you're just like, this is such a cool concept, and then older people in your life will just say, no, that's from Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. That's completely different. So I don't really blame Hitchcock or this movie in particular for being so predictable and kind of formulaic, but at the same time, it does take you out of the movie in certain scenes, especially towards the middle where characters do kind of express doubts over whether or not they're wrong, especially with Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. And it also made the movie feel a little bit slower in the middle once they begin to question themselves and their relationship, and it felt like there was 20 minutes of extra padding for no real reason. But that's really about it. Rear Window, it probably is one of Alfred Hitchcock's best movies. It has some of the best stylistic trademarks that he uses. And one other one that I want to point out is, I love how there's a musician that's one of the neighbors, and he's always playing his piano. So the musical score comes directly from that musician character, and it makes the overall score feel like a character of its own. When it's daylight, it's full of music, full of energy, but at nighttime, there's nothing but dead silence as Stewart and Kelly are observing this one murder suspect, who's also played very well by Raymond Burr with almost no dialogue whatsoever. You never hear him for the first hour and a half. You only see him from the point of view of the binoculars, which makes him the size of an ant, which also makes him seem a little defenseless, because without spoiling anything, there are so many scenes where he has absolutely no idea that he's under suspicion by anyone, which also kind of makes us wonder if that's really the case, if he knows if someone is watching him the entire time, or if he acknowledges that anyone's going to ask some questions about where his wife's been this entire time. It leaves so many possibilities, so many interpretations, and that's the genius of this movie in regards to building its suspense. Rear Window is so well directed, so well acted, so well written, so well scored that if you have Crave or any other streaming service with Rear Window on it, give it a watch. It'll totally be worth it. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give Rear Window a 4.5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Rear Window, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Let me know what some of your other favorite Alfred Hitchcock movies, because I've got plenty more classic movies to go along with over the course of well, however long we're stuck here. So whatever the case is, let me know in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for more classic movie reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.